Which players have higher ceilings than you might realize? We'll tell you right now on Fantasy Football Today in 5. I'm Adam Azer. I'm joined by Jacob Gibbs. Follow him on Twitter at JAGibbs_23, writer for SportsLine, great advanced metrics. And he's going to tell us about some players who, if they regress a little bit, the ceilings are really high. And these are guys that you're looking at in your draft. So let's go one by one here. Start with Michael Pittman.
Yeah, I'm glad we're starting with Pittman because we're probably going to spend maybe the majority of our time here. I'm super excited about Pittman. There's a lot to unpack within his collegiate and NFL, advanced analytical profile, and everything seems to be pointing in the right direction for a huge, year 3 breakout here with Matt Ryan now under center. So Pittman was somebody I was not very high on heading into last year. In his time at USC and in his rookie season with the Colts, he had not shown any ability to draw targets at a high rate. As a rookie, his target per out run rate was only 16.7%, and the list of players who have ran enough routes to qualify and had a target per out run rate below 17% is really unencouraging among rookie receivers. Really, the only ones who have gone on to have any sort of a productive career are Cortland Sutton and Michael Gallup. And then at USC, he was 66th percentile compared to just the college football average on target per out run rate, which is fine, but not as high as you'd expect for a player who was drafted 34th overall. So typically, when you see receivers who just don't show an ability to demand targets at a high rate, that's not something that changes in their career. They rarely are going to develop into a true target hog, especially in year 2. But that's exactly what we saw from Pittman last year. He really was, a wide receiver 1 in that offense. His target per out run rate rose by 39% from year 1 to year 2. His yard per out run rate rose by 42%, had a 26% target share, 32% air yardage share, making him just one of 10 receivers in the entire NFL to clear both those marks. So that's all really exciting. It did come on an offense that was devoid of other, competent pass catchers, but still just like proving capable of doing that at his age, like truly operating as a wide receiver 1 is really exciting. And now we get Matt Ryan taking over here. And Ryan has a history, unlike really anyone in the NFL, of truly like feeding his wide receiver 1, just like top of the league volume. And of course, Julio Jones inflates those numbers, but it's something that we've seen consistently. No matter who his wide receiver 1 is, he's produced a top 6 fantasy receiver in every season from 2014 to 2020, which is just absurd. That stretch broke last year, but even last year we saw Russell Gage, his target per route run rate skyrocketed in his first year as the number 1 receiver for Ryan, and that's the exact same thing that we saw for Calvin Ridley the year prior, where neither of these guys had ever been targeted at a high rate, and then as soon as they took over as Ryan's trusted number 1 receiver, their rate rose by 20+%. So that is really, really exciting for Pittman, who has, unlike these guys, he's already shown an ability to, operate in this role. We really had never seen Calvin Ridley. His target per out run rate had never been above 20% prior to 2020, and then it jumped all the way up to 26%. Pittman's already done it. And now he gets a quarterback who loves, just peppering that number 1 guy and feeding that guy. And if and this is, somewhat arbitrary since it's just 2 players, but if his target per out run rate rises within the range that we saw Gage and Ridley in their first year, that would put him up to 26 to 29.5%. If last year's rate rose by that amount in 2022, which is like Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, Justin Jefferson, Deontay Johnson, Tyreek Hill, like that's true wide receiver 1 stuff. And I think that is realistically within his range of outcomes. And then on top of all that, there's touchdown regression that could be coming for him in a positive way as well. So this is a stat that I'll reference with each of these guys is touchdown dependency rating, which simply represents the percentage of a player's fantasy point total that came on touchdowns. The league average among players with at least 350 routes run in 2021 was 18.6%. Pittman ranked as 28th percentile. His was just below 15%. And so that's kind of unusual for a big bodied receiver like him. I think most people would be surprised by that. part of it is that Indianapolis scores most of their touchdowns on the ground. But
right,
if that evens out a little bit more with Ryan, if this all comes together, you know what I mean, where the targets rise, he really is leaning on his number one receiver, and he has better luck in the touchdown department, I think a realistic like range for him could be like top 10, top 8 fantasy receiver. And I don't know if many people give him that type of credit in terms of looking at what his fantasy ceiling could be.
Well, that was 5.5 minutes.
Are you serious?
Yes. So give me 30 seconds on Dalvin Cook and T. Higgins.
I told you, man. I'm too excited about him. Dalvin Cook and T. Higgins, both its touchdown dependency rating as well. Dalvin Cook, the main thing with him is Minnesota. They went from scoring the rushing to passing touchdown ratio was 5th in 2019 and then 16th in 2020. Last year was down to 31st. I think that's mostly just bad luck. I think with more touchdowns coming on the ground, we should see Dalvin bounce back up. And then, I don't know. There's no way to fit this in.
That's okay. Keep going. We're live here. So.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Higgins, same thing. His touchdown rate was way too low. And like you look at Jamar Chase, he had 13. Higgins only had 6. When both players were on the field, Higgins was 15% more likely to draw a target than Jamar Chase. And we saw Higgins as the year progressed, like really start to elevate himself into like the top 6, top 8 in fantasy receiver most metrics. His yard per hour rate was all the way up to 2.64 from their bye on, which is basically just the second half of the season for him. Only Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, and Devonta Adams cleared that rate over the course of the full season. So
I think we'll wrap it up there, Jacob. Yeah. I should have asked him about Michael Pittman. I guess I should.
I've been waiting to talk about Michael Pittman all offseason, man.
All right, I can see that. All right, that's fantasy football today in 7. We'll come back tomorrow. I'll tell you about floors to avoid with Jacob. No Michael Pittman talk on that show. We'll talk to you later, everybody. Thanks a lot.